bound to the ruthless alpha. She's the secret he'll kill to keep by Shadow Howl's tail. Hey there, my incredible listeners. Welcome back to another spine-tingling werewolf shifter romance that's gonna keep you up way past your bedtime. I'm talking danger, secrets, and an alpha so ruthless he'll make your heart race and your pulse pound. Your support is everything. Every listen, every like, every comment. It's like finding your true mate in a world full of lone wolves. So tonight, we're diving deep into a story about secrets, power, and a woman who witnessed something she was never meant to see. We've got Xavier Carr, an alpha who doesn't just break rules, he rewrites them. And Jane Walker, a woman whose past is about to collide with a supernatural world she didn't know existed. Get comfortable. Grab your favorite blanket, maybe some snacks if you're settling in for the night, and let's sink our teeth into this delicious, dangerous tale. The moon is full, the stakes are high, and someone's secret is about to become everyone's problem. If you're new here, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you never miss a release. We drop these stories daily because I know you need your fix. And if you're vibing with the story, throw us a like. It helps more than you know. For my loyal crew, welcome home. Ready to run with the pack? Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Wrong Place. Jane Walker's hands were steady as she adjusted the camera lens, zooming in on the third-floor window of the Carr Industries corporate building. 11:30 p.m. on a Tuesday, and the lights were still blazing in Xavier Carr's private office. Exactly as her editor had predicted. "The bastard never sleeps," she muttered, checking the digital display. The angle was perfect, the resolution sharp enough to capture whatever shady business deal was about to go down. 3 months. 3 months of chasing leads, bribing security guards, and tracking the movement patterns of Seattle's most dangerous businessman. Xavier Carr, CEO of Carr Industries, real estate mogul, and according to her carefully compiled evidence, the orchestrator of at least 4 suspicious property acquisitions where the previous owners had mysteriously vanished or died in convenient accidents. The Seattle Chronicle had passed on her story twice. Too inflammatory, they said. Not enough concrete evidence. But Jane knew a predator when she saw one, and Xavier Carr had left a trail of destruction from Portland to Vancouver. She just needed one photograph, one meeting with the wrong people, one piece of undeniable proof. Her camera was positioned in the abandoned office building across the street, a structure Carr himself had purchased 6 months ago and left vacant. The irony wasn't lost on her. Using his own property to expose him felt like poetic justice. The first figure appeared in the office window at 11:47 p.m. Jane's breath caught as she focused the lens. Xavier Carr himself, even more imposing in person than in the corporate headshots that graced Forbes and Fortune. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving with a fluid grace that seemed almost predatory. Dark hair swept back from a face that was all sharp angles and cold authority. Even from this distance, shit. Even through a telephoto lens, there was something about him that made her skin prickle with instinctive warning. 2 more men entered the office. Jane's finger hovered over the shutter button, ready to capture whatever deal was about to transpire. But then something happened that made her freeze. Xavier Carr turned toward the window, and for just a moment, his eyes seemed to glow. Amber, bright, almost luminescent in the office lighting. Jane blinked, certain it was a trick of the distance, a reflection from the computer screens behind him. Then he started to change. Jane's mind refused to process what she was seeing. The camera slipped in her grip, nearly falling before training kicked in and she caught it, pressing record on the video function with trembling fingers. Xavier Carr's body was shifting, bones cracking audibly even through the reinforced glass. His clothes tore as his frame expanded, his face elongating into something between human and animal. Fur, midnight black, rippled across his skin. His hands became claws, his teeth fangs. Within 30 seconds, where a man had stood, there was now a massive wolf. Not dog-sized, not even bear-sized. This creature was something from nightmares and ancient legends, standing nearly 7 feet tall at the shoulder, with eyes that burned with unmistakable intelligence and rage. The other 2 men in the office didn't run. They didn't scream. They bowed. Then they transformed too. Jane's camera recorded everything. The impossible, the supernatural, the absolute destruction of everything she thought she knew about the world. Her hands shook so badly she nearly dropped the equipment twice, but she kept filming, kept capturing evidence that would either make her career or get her committed to a psychiatric ward. The wolves moved through the office, clearly communicating though she couldn't hear their voices. Then Xavier, the black wolf with those burning amber eyes, turned directly toward her hiding spot across the street. Jane's blood turned to ice. There was no way he could see her. She was too far away, hidden in darkness, with no lights behind her to give away her position. But those amber eyes locked onto her location with absolute certainty, and the expression in them was unmistakable. Rage. And promise. The wolf that was Xavier Carr moved toward the window, and Jane finally found her legs. She grabbed her camera, shoved it in her bag, and ran. Behind her, she heard glass shattering, the sound impossibly loud in the quiet night. She hit the stairwell at a dead sprint, taking the steps 3 at a time, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might explode. 7 floors down in the darkness, stumbling, catching herself on the railings, the sound of her breathing harsh and panicked in the enclosed space. Behind her, from above, came a sound that would haunt her nightmares. A howl, deep and resonant, filled with fury and hunger. It echoed down the stairwell, seeming to come from everywhere at once. Jane burst through the ground floor exit into the alley, sprinting toward her car parked 2 blocks away. Her lungs burned. Her legs screamed. Every shadow seemed to hide teeth and claws. She reached her ancient Toyota, fumbled with her keys, dropped them. Grabbed them again with a sob of terror. The engine turned over on the 3rd try, and she peeled out of the parking spot, tires squealing, not caring about traffic laws or speed limits. In her rearview mirror, she caught a glimpse of movement. Something massive and black, keeping pace with her car for 3 blocks before disappearing into an alley. Jane didn't stop driving until she reached her apartment building 20 minutes away. She sat in her car in the underground parking garage for another 10 minutes, watching the entrance, waiting for something to follow her into the darkness. Nothing came. Finally, legs weak and hands still trembling, she grabbed her bag and made it to her apartment on the 4th floor. She locked the door, engaged the deadbolt, shoved a chair under the handle, and collapsed against the wall. Her camera bag sat on the floor beside her, containing evidence of the impossible. Jane Walker had set out to expose a corrupt businessman. Instead, she discovered that monsters were real. And the biggest monster in Seattle now knew she existed. Chapter 2: Damage Control. Xavier Carr stood in his office, human once more, surrounded by shattered glass and the acrid scent of his own rage. His chest heaved with the effort of controlling the shift, of forcing his body back into human form when every instinct screamed to hunt, to chase, to eliminate the threat. How bad? His voice came out rough, more growl than words. His beta, Chen, was already on his phone pulling up security feeds. She got footage. How much, I don't know. But from that building, she had a clear view. Name. Xavier bit out the word, grabbing a shirt from the emergency clothes he kept in his office closet. All shifters learned early to keep spare clothing accessible. Transformations had a way of destroying expensive suits. Working on it. Whoever she is, she's good. She disabled the security systems in the building across the street and knew exactly where to position herself for the sightline into your office. Chen's fingers flew across his tablet. This was planned. Professional. Xavier's second beta, Dominic Torres, emerged from the private bathroom, also fully clothed again. The scent trail leads to the parking garage 2 blocks west. She had a vehicle waiting. By the time I got there, only exhaust fumes and rubber marks. She saw everything. Xavier's hands clenched into fists. In 300 years of existence, he'd been meticulous about keeping his true nature hidden. The car pack had thrived in Seattle precisely because they'd mastered the art of existing in plain sight, of building empires while wearing human faces. Now some photographer, some journalist, had footage that could destroy everything. We contain this. Xavier's voice dropped to that tone his pack knew meant absolute authority. I want her identity in the next hour. I want every piece of footage she captured, every device she owns, every cloud backup she's ever made. And I want her. Xavier. Chen's voice carried a note of caution. If she's pressed, if she disappears, there will be questions. I don't care. Xavier moved to the shattered window, looking out at the city he'd claimed as his territory. She witnessed a transformation. She has proof. That makes her the single greatest threat to this pack's existence. His phone buzzed. The name that appeared on the screen made his jaw tighten. Father, he answered, because ignoring Jonathan Carr was never an option. Explain to me why I just received a security alert that your office windows are destroyed and there's been an unauthorized recording of pack business. The elder Carr's voice could have frozen fire. A journalist. She was watching from the Heritage Building across the street. A long, dangerous pause. How much did she see? Everything. Full transformation. All 3 of us. Unacceptable. The word was absolute. This is exactly the kind of carelessness that led to the purges in Europe. Do you remember what I told you about Scotland in 1847? Xavier closed his eyes. He'd heard the story 100 times. His great-grandfather caught shifting by a group of hunters. The resulting massacre that had wiped out half the pack before they could flee to America. I remember. Then you understand this cannot stand. This woman has seen something that makes her a threat not just to our pack, but to every shifter on the West Coast. The council will hear about this by morning. They will demand action. The council, the governing body of the Pacific Northwest packs, ancient and merciless in their protection of shifter secrecy. I'll handle it, Xavier said. See what you do. And Xavier, the Council's preferred solution to human witnesses is quite final. If you cannot guarantee her silence through other means, they will send someone who can. The call ended. Xavier stood in the ruins of his office, feeling the weight of 3 centuries of pack law pressing down on him. The rules were clear, carved in blood and survival instinct. Humans who discovered the truth had 2 options: be turned or die. But something about tonight felt wrong. The woman's scent, caught briefly as she fled, had been wrong. Not just humans. Something else underneath. Something his wolf had recognized even in the rage of pursuit. Got her. Chen's voice cut through his thoughts. Jane Walker, freelance investigative journalist. I am 28 years old. She's been digging into your business deals for 3 months. Xavier took the tablet Chen offered, studying the photograph of the woman who just turned his world upside down. Dark hair, intelligent green eyes, a determined set to her jaw that suggested she didn't scare easily. Pretty in a way that had nothing to do with makeup or artifice, and everything to do with the sharp awareness in her gaze. His wolf stirred, responding to the image in a way that had nothing to do with threat assessment. She's been tracking you, Chen continued. Property acquisitions, business deals, your entire schedule. She thinks you're involved in some kind of real estate fraud scheme. She's been trying to get enough evidence to run an exposé. Instead, she got proof of the supernatural. Xavier scrolled through the background report. Jane Walker, graduated top of her class from Northwestern's journalism program. Award-winning investigative pieces on corruption in city planning commissions. Currently freelance after being fired from the Seattle Tribune 2 years ago for refusing to kill a story about a state senator's financial misconduct. Principled. Stubborn. Exactly the type who wouldn't be bought or scared off. Address? Xavier asked. Capitol Hill. Apartment building on Madison Street. The security system is basic, easily bypassed. No, Dominic's voice held a warning. You're not thinking of going there yourself. Xavier looked at his beta, the wolf rising in his eyes. That's exactly what I'm thinking. Xavier, this woman just saw us transform. She'll be terrified, probably armed, and if you show up at her door, she'll know you tracked her down. That will only confirm that what she saw was real. It doesn't matter what she believes. What matters is that recording. Xavier handed the tablet back to Chen. I want a full team in her apartment building. Every exit was watched, but nobody moves until I give the word. What are you planning? Chen asked carefully. I'm going to have a conversation with Ms. Walker. Civilized. Humans. I'm going to explain that what she thinks she saw was elaborate special effects for a film project. Corporate team building. Whatever story sells. And I'm going to politely ask for her footage back. And if she doesn't buy it? Xavier's smile held no warmth. Then we move to plan B. Which is? She disappears. The footage disappears. And Seattle loses one more crusading journalist to the dangers of investigating dangerous people. Chen and Dominic exchanged glances. They'd been with Xavier long enough to know he didn't make empty threats. But they also knew that killing a journalist would bring exactly the kind of attention the pack couldn't afford. There's something else. Chen pulled up a new file on his tablet. According to her medical records, which I may have illegally accessed, Jane Walker had a full genetic screening last year as part of a health insurance requirement. And the results were flagged by the lab, unusual markers in her DNA, the kind of genetic anomalies that look a lot like dormant shifter genes. Xavier went very still. She's a carrier? Possible. Or she's got shifter blood somewhere in her ancestry. The markers aren't active, but they're there. This changed everything. A human witness was a threat to be eliminated. But a potential shifter, someone with dormant genes that could be awakened, was a different matter entirely. They couldn't kill someone who might be one of their own kind. We need to be certain, Xavier said. Get me everything on her family history. Parents, grandparents, anyone who might have passed shifter blood down the line. Already on it, but Xavier, even if she is a carrier, that doesn't solve the problem of the footage. One problem at a time. Xavier checked his watch. 2:37 a.m. Jane Walker would be in her apartment right now, probably still processing what she'd seen. Maybe already uploading footage to cloud storage or sending it to news outlets. He needed to move fast. I'm going to her apartment, alone. Xavier. Both betas started to protest. Alone, he repeated, the alpha command in his voice making it impossible for them to argue. A full pack showing up will terrify her. One man, calm, reasonable, offering explanations, that's manageable. Trust me. The council will get their pound of flesh if I fail, but I won't fail. Xavier grabbed his jacket, checking that his appearance was perfectly human, perfectly safe. I'll have that footage in my hands before sunrise, and I'll have a better understanding of exactly what Jane Walker is. He paused at the door, looking back at his betas. If I'm not back in 2 hours, assume it went badly. Then you move in and clean up the mess. Understood? Understood, Chen said quietly. Xavier left his office, taking the private elevator down to the parking garage. His black Range Rover was waiting, and he slid behind the wheel with the easy grace of someone who'd been driving since before cars had seatbelts. Jane Walker's apartment was 20 minutes away. 20 minutes to plan an approach that wouldn't get him shot. 20 minutes to decide if he was going to save her life or end it. His wolf had its own opinion, whispering insistently in the back of his mind. Mate. The word came unbidden, unwelcome. Mine. Xavier gripped the steering wheel hard enough to make the leather creak. Absolutely not. His wolf was confused, reacting to the stress and the chase and the unusual scent markers in the woman's blood. This was business. Threat elimination. Nothing more. But as he drove through the dark Seattle streets toward Jane Walker's apartment, he couldn't quite silence the part of him that had recognized something in her scent, in the brief glimpse of her face through the camera lens. Something that made her far more dangerous than any witness. Something that made her important. Chapter 3. The Alpha's Offer. Jane sat on her living room floor, laptop open, hands trembling too much to type. The footage was there, crystal clear, impossible to explain away. Massive wolves where men had been. Transformations that violated every law of physics and biology she'd ever learned. She'd watched the video 17 times now, and her brain still refused to process it. Werewolves. Xavier Carr was a werewolf. The knock on her door at 3:15 a.m. nearly sent her through the ceiling. Jane grabbed the baseball bat she'd propped against the couch and approached slowly, peering through the peephole. Her blood turned to ice. Xavier Carr stood in the hallway wearing a different suit than the one she'd seen him destroy during his transformation, looking perfectly human and absolutely terrifying. Those amber eyes met hers through the peephole, as if he could see her just as clearly as she saw him. Miss Walker. His voice was calm, reasonable, with just enough authority to make it clear he wasn't leaving. I believe we need to talk. Jane's grip tightened on the bat. Go away or I'm calling the police. And tell them what? That the CEO of Carr Industries is at your door? I'm quite certain they'd tell you to speak with my lawyers. A pause. We both know you can't call the police about what you really saw tonight. He was right. What would she even say? Officer, I have footage of a businessman turning into a giant wolf. Please arrest him for being a werewolf. 5 minutes, Xavier continued. That's all I ask, a conversation. Then I'll leave, and you can decide what to do with your footage. You're going to kill me. Jane hated the fear in her voice, but there was no point in pretending. She'd seen what he was. She knew what happened to people who discovered dangerous secrets. If I wanted you dead, Ms. Walker, I wouldn't have knocked. Your apartment has 7 vulnerabilities that would allow easy entry. Your door lock is standard residential grade, easily bypassed. Your windows don't have security sensors, and you're on the 4th floor, easily accessible from the fire escape. The clinical assessment was somehow more terrifying than any threat. So why knock? Jane asked. Because I'm not a monster, despite what you saw tonight. I'm a businessman who would like to resolve a problem before it becomes messy. Please, 5 minutes. Against every survival instinct, Jane found herself unlocking the door. She kept the bat in one hand and her phone in the other. 911 already dialed, finger hovering over the call button. Xavier stepped inside with the careful movements of someone who understood he was walking into hostile territory. Up close, he was even more imposing than through the camera lens. Tall enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes, broad-shouldered, moving with a fluid grace that now made terrible sense. He closed the door behind him, and Jane took an involuntary step back. "You're not going to shift and eat me?" The words came out before she could stop them, hysteria edging into her voice. "Werewolves don't eat people, Ms. Walker. Common misconception. But I assure you, human flesh is not on my dietary preferences." His tone was almost dry, as if they were discussing weather instead of his supernatural nature. "You're admitting it." Jane stared at him. "You're actually admitting you're a werewolf. You have footage. Denying it would be insulting to your intelligence." Xavier moved further into her small living room, taking in the laptop on the floor, the scattered notes and photographs she'd compiled about his business dealings. "You've been investigating me for 3 months. I thought you were a criminal." "I am, by certain definitions." He picked up one of her printed photographs, a shot of him leaving a business meeting. "Real estate fraud, coercion, intimidation. You had quite the case building. Unfortunately, you stumbled onto something much bigger." Jane forced herself to stay calm, to think like a journalist instead of prey. "How many of you are there?" "That's not information I'm inclined to share with someone who has footage that could expose my entire community." "Community," Jane laughed, the sound edging toward hysterical. "You're talking about it like it's a neighborhood association, not a secret race of shapeshifters." "We prefer shifters to shapeshifters. Less of a mouthful." Xavier set down the photograph and turned those intense amber eyes on her. "Ms. Walker, I'm going to be direct. That footage you captured tonight represents an extinction-level threat to my people. There are approximately 12,000 shifters living in North America. We've survived by remaining hidden, by integrating into human society while maintaining absolute secrecy about our nature. And anyone who discovers your secret gets killed." It wasn't a question. "Usually." His admission was matter-of-fact, chilling. "There are protocols, rules established over centuries to protect our survival. Humans who witness transformations are eliminated unless they can be turned." "Turned?" Jane's hand tightened on the bat. "You mean bitten? Made into werewolves?" "It's more complicated than that, but essentially yes. However, the transformation doesn't always take place. Success rate is approximately 30%. The other 70% die screaming as their bodies reject the change." The clinical way he delivered that information made Jane's stomach turn. "So my options are death, or a 70% chance of a different kind of death." "Those are the standard protocols, yes." Xavier took a step closer, and Jane raised the bat defensively. He stopped, holding up his hands in a placating gesture. "But I'm not particularly interested in standard protocols." "What does that mean?" "It means that killing you or turning you both present problems I'd prefer to avoid. You're a journalist, one who's been digging into my business. If you disappear, there will be questions, investigations, more attention than I want on my operations. And turning you carries that unfortunate mortality rate, plus the complication of forcing someone into this life against their will. So what then? You came here to tell me you're going to let me live? Jane didn't believe that for a second. I came here to offer you a choice that doesn't end in your death. Xavier pulled out his phone, tapping a few buttons before showing her the screen. This is your bank account. Current balance, negative $842. This is your credit score, 547. This is your employment history, 6 jobs in 3 years, all freelance, all barely covering your rent. Humiliation burned through Jane's fear. You hacked my financial records? I had them compiled before I came here. Know your enemy and all that. He pocketed the phone. You're a talented journalist, Ms. Walker. Your investigative work on the city planning corruption case was exceptional. But you made enemies. You refused to compromise your principles. And now you're barely surviving. What's your point? My point is that I can solve all of that. I can make your financial problems disappear. I can give you access to stories that would make your career. I can provide protection from anyone who might want to retaliate for your previous work. He paused, letting that sink in. All I need in exchange is your silence, your footage, and your cooperation. Jane stared at him. You're trying to buy me? I'm offering you a mutually beneficial arrangement. You get financial security and career advancement. I get peace of mind that the footage of tonight doesn't end up on CNN. And if I say no? Xavier's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes went cold. Then we moved to less pleasant options. I came here offering you a civilized solution, Ms. Walker, but make no mistake, that footage cannot exist. Whether you cooperate willingly or I take more direct action to retrieve it, the result will be the same. You're threatening me. I'm giving you context. There's a difference. He moved toward her laptop, and Jane stepped between him and the computer. Don't. They were less than a foot apart now, close enough that Jane could see the flecks of gold in his amber eyes and could feel the unnatural heat radiating from his body. Close enough to remember that this perfectly human-looking man had been a massive wolf less than an hour ago. You're brave, Xavier said quietly. Foolish but brave. Do you understand what I am, Ms. Walker? What could I do to you before you could even press that call button on your phone? I understand that you haven't done it yet. Jane forced herself to hold his gaze. If you were going to kill me, I'd already be dead. So either you need something from me beyond my silence, or you're not quite the monster you're pretending to be. Something flickered across Xavier's face, too quick to identify. Perhaps a bit of both. He reached past her, not touching the laptop, but pulling out a business card from his jacket. This is my direct number. I'm gonna leave now and give you the night to think about my offer. But Ms. Walker understands this. By sunrise, the council will know about tonight's breach. They will send someone to eliminate the threat. That someone won't knock on your door and offer you choices. Jane took the card with shaking hands. The council? The governing body of shifter society. They're old, powerful, and they don't believe in the subtle approach I'm offering. If you want to live, you'll call that number before dawn and agree to my terms. He moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing. Your blood work from last year, the genetic screening for your insurance. Did they explain the unusual markers they found? Jane frowned. They said it was just genetic variation, nothing concerning. Those markers indicate shifter ancestry. Somewhere in your family tree, Ms. Walker. Someone was like me. That's why your scent was off tonight, why my wolf reacted the way it did. You're not quite human, even if you don't know it yet. That's impossible. Is it? You just watched 3 men turn into wolves. Perhaps expand your definition of impossible. Xavier opened the door. Call me before sunrise, Ms. Walker. Agree to my terms, or spend what's left of your life running from creatures you can't escape. He left, closing the door quietly behind him. Jane stood frozen in her apartment, baseball bat still in hand, Xavier Carr's business card clutched in the other. Her laptop sat on the floor, containing footage that apparently made her a target for supernatural assassination. She had until sunrise to decide if she believed him. Looking at the clock, she had approximately 3 hours to choose between cooperation with a predator or running from an entire hidden society of them. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. Ms. Walker. The voice was female, cold, with an accent Jane couldn't place. My name is Victoria Ashford. I represent the Council of Elders. I understand you witnessed something unfortunate tonight. Jane's blood ran cold. Who is this? I told you, the Council. We handle security breaches of the kind you represent. I'm calling as a courtesy because Xavier Carr has requested time to resolve this matter himself. You have until sunrise to reach an agreement with him. After that, you become my problem, and I solve problems much more permanently than Mr. Carr. Are you threatening me? I'm informing you of reality. Humans who discover our existence don't get to keep that knowledge in their lives. Xavier is offering you a middle ground. I suggest you take it. A pause. I do hope we don't have to meet in person, Ms. Walker. I'm not nearly as patient as Alpha Carr. The call ended. Jane looked at the business card in her hand, then at her laptop. She'd set out to expose corruption. Instead, she'd discovered that monsters were real, that she apparently had monster blood in her own veins, and that she had 3 hours to decide if she was going to trust a werewolf or take her chances running. She opened her laptop and looked at the footage one more time. Xavier Carr's transformation. Captured in crystal clarity. Proof of the impossible. Evidence that would change the world if she released it. And sign her death warrant. Jane picked up her phone and stared at Xavier's number. The sky outside her window was still dark, but the faintest hint of gray touched the horizon. Sunrise was coming, and with it, her deadline. Chapter 4. The Deal. Xavier sat in his Range Rover 3 blocks from Jane Walker's apartment waiting. His phone was on the dashboard, volume up, waiting for her call. The sky was lightening to the east, dawn approaching with its usual inevitability. She's not going to call. Chen's voice came through the Bluetooth speaker, monitoring the situation from Xavier's office. It's been 2 hours. She's either running or uploading that footage to every news outlet she can find. She's thinking, Xavier replied, eyes fixed on the apartment building. She's smart enough to recognize she has no good options, which means she's trying to find a third option that doesn't exist. And if she doesn't call before sunrise? Xavier didn't answer. He didn't want to think about Victoria Ashford showing up at Jane's door, about the brutal efficiency with which the Council's enforcer would eliminate the problem. Victoria had a reputation for leaving no traces, no evidence, nothing that couldn't be explained away as accident or random violence. His wolf stirred uneasily, agitated at the thought of harm coming to the woman who'd witnessed their transformation. That protectiveness was troubling, unprecedented, and completely inconvenient. Xavier, Dominic's voice joined the call. We've got a problem. Jane Walker's laptop just pinged a cloud storage service. She's uploading something. Can you block it? Working on it, but if she's got redundant backups, multiple accounts, we might not catch them all. She's been a journalist for 6 years. She knows how to protect her sources and evidence. Xavier's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Tell me the moment you have confirmation on what she uploaded and where. His phone buzzed with an incoming call. Jane Walker. He answered immediately. Ms. Walker, I was beginning to think you preferred Victoria's approach. I have conditions. Her voice was steady, impressive given the circumstances. If I'm going to agree to this, I need guarantees that you won't just kill me the moment you have the footage. I'm listening. First, I want a contract. Legal, binding, stating that you and your pack, or whatever you call yourselves, will not harm me, ever, for any reason. That's not how pack law works. I can't make promises about variables I don't control. Then we don't have a deal. Jane's stubbornness was both infuriating and oddly admirable. Fine. I'll provide a contract stating that I personally will not harm you, and that I will use my authority as alpha to protect you from others in my pack. But I can't control the council, and I can't prevent you from doing something stupid that forces my hand. Second condition, I keep investigating you. Xavier blinked. Excuse me? You heard me. I don't trust you, Mr. Carr. You're a predator in every sense of the word, and I'm not going to just forget about the very real criminal activities I've uncovered in your business dealings. So if I'm going to be silent about the werewolf thing, I get to keep pursuing the actual crimes. Absolutely not. Then I upload this footage to 5 different news outlets right now and take my chances with your counsel. Xavier closed his eyes, counting to 10 in 3 different languages. You're negotiating suicide, Ms. Walker. I'm negotiating for the right to do my job. You want my silence about shifters? Fine. But I'm a journalist. I don't stop investigating stories just because the subject threatens me. That's not how this works. That's exactly how this works when the subject can tear you apart with his bare hands. And yet you're still talking instead of killing. Interesting. Xavier could hear the slight tremor in her voice, the fear she was trying to hide beneath bravado. But the courage was real, the determination genuine. She was terrified and still negotiating, still fighting for some scrap of control in a situation where she had none. His wolf stirred again, that troubling protectiveness rising. Strong, brave, worthy. Third condition, Jane continued. You answer my questions. About shifters, about your pack, about what I am if you're right about the genetic markers. I don't work blind. If I'm going to be involved in this world, I need to understand it. That's a lot of trust you're asking me to extend to someone who is trying to destroy my reputation 3 hours ago. And you're asking me to hand over evidence of a supernatural community to a creature who admits people in my position usually end up dead. We're both taking risks here, Mr. Carr. Xavier found himself almost smiling despite the situation. Jane Walker had steel in her spine, the kind of stubborn courage that usually got humans killed but occasionally made them interesting. Fine. Your conditions are acceptable with modifications. 1, I'll provide a contract guaranteeing your safety from me and my direct pack. 2, you can continue investigating my business dealings. But any story you intend to publish goes through me first. I'm not giving you carte blanche to destroy everything I've built. 3, I'll answer your questions about shifters, but there are pack secrets I can't reveal. Some knowledge is earned, not given. Silence on the other end. Xavier could almost hear her weighing the offer, calculating odds, deciding if she trusted him even a fraction of an inch. I want the contract by tonight, Jane finally said. Real lawyer, real legal protection. And I want it to include protection for any family I have. If you know about genetic markers in my blood, you've looked at my family. I want them safe, too. Xavier made a note on his phone. Your mother, Rachel Walker, lives in Portland, retired teacher. No unusual genetic markers. Your father, David Walker, died when you were 7, car accident. How do you know that? Background check. Thorough one. Your father's death was investigated and ruled accidental, but the report noted some unusual details. Witnesses reported seeing an animal near the crash site. Large, wolf-like. Jane's breath caught. You think a shifter killed my father? I think your father may have been a shifter, and his death may not have been as accidental as it appeared. The genetic markers in your blood had to come from somewhere. Xavier pulled up the file on his tablet, scrolling through the details. David Walker. Disappeared for 3 years in his early 20s. Suddenly reappeared in Portland with no explanation of where he'd been. Married your mother had you, kept a low profile, never spoke about his past. He told Mom he was traveling, working odd jobs, finding himself, or learning to control a wolf. Xavier paused, letting her process. If your father was a shifter who chose to live outside pack structure, to marry a human and hide his nature, there are factions who would have seen that as betrayal, as dangerous. Someone killed him because he married my mother? Jane's voice shook with anger now instead of fear. Possibly. Or his death really was an accident. 21 years ago, I was young, not alpha yet. I didn't have access to the information I have now, but I can look into it if you want answers about your father. Another long silence. Add that to the conditions. You help me find out what really happened to my dad. If shifters killed him, I want to know who and why. Xavier should have refused. Getting involved in a 2-decade-old mystery that likely involved the council or one of the more traditional packs would only complicate an already complicated situation. But something in Jane's voice, the raw need to know, the daughter still grieving a father taken too soon, made him nod even though she couldn't see him. Agreed. I'll investigate your father's death. Then we have a deal. I'll give you the footage, all copies, all backups, but I swear to you, Mr. Carr, if you betray me, if you harm me or my mother, I'll find a way to expose everything. I don't care what it costs me. Duly noted, Ms. Walker. Now about that upload you started 10 minutes ago. Insurance. It's set to auto-publish in 72 hours unless I cancel it. If anything happens to me, the world learns about shifters. Xavier actually did smile this time, albeit grimly. Clever. Mutually assured destruction. I read a lot of spy novels, so where do we go from here? Pack up whatever you need for a few days. I'm sending a car to pick you up in 30 minutes. You're coming to my estate until we can be certain the council accepts our arrangement. I'm not going anywhere with you until I have that contract. The contract will be waiting when you arrive. My lawyer is drafting it now. But Ms. Walker, Victoria Ashford doesn't care about our deal until the council officially approves it. Right now, you're still a target. My estate has security, wards, protections. Your apartment has locks and hope. Wards, like magic. Like shifter magic, yes. We're not just physical creatures, Ms. Walker. There's more to our world than transformations and claws. Another question I'll answer once you're somewhere safe. Jane was quiet, and Xavier could imagine her pacing her small apartment, weighing options, trying to find the trap in his offer. How do I know this isn't just an easier way to kill me? Get me isolated, no witnesses? You don't. You're choosing to trust that I have more to gain from your cooperation than your death, which I do. A deal with you is cleaner than a body the council has to dispose of. He softened his voice slightly. I meant what I said earlier. I'm not a monster, despite what I am. I don't kill unnecessarily, and I certainly don't kill people who might be able to answer questions about their own heritage. The genetic markers. Yes, you're a dormant shifter, Jane. You have the blood, the potential, but it's never been activated. That makes you rare, valuable even. Most shifters are born from two shifter parents. Dormants, people with the genetics but no active abilities, they're unusual. The council will want to study you. Study me how? Blood work, genetic testing, nothing invasive? They'll want to understand how your father passed on the genes without you manifesting abilities. It's rare enough to be academically interesting. I'm not a lab rat. No, you're a potential shifter who witnessed a transformation and lived to negotiate about it. That makes you a unicorn, Ms. Walker. Act accordingly. Xavier checked the time. 28 minutes until the car arrives. Pack light. We'll be at the estate for 3 days, maybe 4. And then what? Then you go back to your life, Ita, with a new understanding of what exists in the shadows. And I go back to mine, secure in the knowledge that the footage of the impossible is destroyed. You're awfully confident I won't just run. You could try. You wouldn't make it 3 blocks. I have people watching every exit of your building, not to threaten you, but to protect you from Victoria if she decides to move before sunrise, eh? He paused. The car will be a black Mercedes, license plate 7XRV29. The driver is Thomas, one of my pack. He'll know the code phrase. What code phrase? When he picks you up, he'll say, Alpha sent me. You respond with which Alpha? He'll say, the one who keeps his promises. That way you know it's really my driver and not someone else trying to intercept you. Jane laughed, the sound slightly hysterical. This is insane. 12 hours ago, I was a journalist chasing a story about real estate fraud. Now I'm using code phrases and running from supernatural assassins. Welcome to my world, Ms. Walker. It's considerably more complicated than real estate fraud. I'm bringing my laptop and my phone, and I'm not giving you the upload passwords until I have that contract and I've read every word. Fair enough, I'll see you in an hour. Xavier ended the call and immediately dialed Chen. She agreed, send Thomas to pick her up. And Chen? Full security detail on that route. If Victoria makes a move before Jane gets to the estate, I want her intercepted. Understood. Xavier, the council called. They want a video conference at dawn. That's in 45 minutes. Perfect timing. Xavier started the Range Rover, pulling out of his surveillance position. I'll be there in 20. Prepare the conference room. What are you going to tell them? The truth. That I've secured the footage, gained the witnesses' cooperation, and potentially discovered a dormant shifter with valuable genetic information. They'll posture and threaten, but ultimately they'll accept that my solution is cleaner than Victoria's. And if they don't? Then I'll remind them that I'm alpha of the largest pack in the Pacific Northwest, and I don't require their permission to handle threats in my territory. Xavier's voice hardened. The council can advise. They can request it, but they don't command me. That's going to piss off some very old, very powerful shifters. They can get in line behind all the other people I've pissed off this week. Xavier drove through the pre-dawn streets, his mind already moving to the next problem. The council would be the easy part. Convincing them that Jane Walker was more valuable alive than dead, that she represented an opportunity rather than just a threat. The hard part would be figuring out what to do with a woman who'd witnessed his transformation, who had shifted blood but no active abilities, who was brave enough to negotiate with a werewolf and stubborn enough to demand answers. A woman whose scent had made his wolf whisper, "Mate," in the deepest parts of his consciousness. Xavier pushed that thought away ruthlessly. The mate bond was instinctive, primal, and frequently wrong. His wolf responding to Jane meant nothing beyond biological recognition of compatible genetics. It had to mean nothing. Because if it meant something, if Jane Walker was actually his mate, then everything became infinitely more complicated. And Xavier's life was already complicated enough. Chapter 5: The Estate. Jane stood on the curb outside her apartment building at 4:47 a.m., a hastily packed duffel bag at her feet, every nerve screaming that this was a terrible idea. The black Mercedes pulled up exactly on time, and a man in his 50s with silver hair and kind eyes stepped out. "Ma'am, Alpha sent me." Jane's throat was dry. "Which Alpha?" "The one who keeps his promises." The code phrase was correct, but that didn't make getting into a car with a werewolf any less terrifying. Still, staying in her apartment with a supernatural assassin potentially on the way was worse. She climbed into the back seat. The interior smelled like leather and something else, something wild and clean that she was beginning to recognize as a shifter scent. "I'm Thomas, ma'am. I'll be your driver this morning." He pulled smoothly into traffic, taking a route that seemed deliberately indirect, full of turns and doubling back. "Making sure we're not followed?" Jane asked. "Security protocol, ma'am. Alpha takes threats seriously." Thomas glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "If you don't mind my saying, you've got courage. Not many humans negotiate with Xavier Carr and live to drive away." "I haven't driven away yet. I'm in a car with a werewolf going to an estate full of more werewolves. The living part is still theoretical." Thomas chuckled. "Fair point, but for what it's worth, Alpha's word is solid. If he promised you safety, you're safer than you've ever been. He can promise that for himself. What about the others? You'll be under Alpha protection. Anyone who harms you would be challenging Xavier directly. Trust me, ma'am, no one in the car pack is stupid enough to do that." They drove for 45 minutes, leaving the city behind for increasingly rural roads. Jane watched the landscape change through the tinted windows, noting the way civilization gave way to forest. Thick stands of evergreens that looked ancient and untouched. "How much of this land belongs to Xavier?" she asked. "Everything you've seen for the last 20 minutes. 5,000 acres, most of it preserved forest. Pack land, protected and private." 5,000 acres. Jane tried to wrap her mind around that kind of space, that kind of wealth. Xavier Carr wasn't just rich. He was land baron, build your own kingdom wealthy. The gates appeared suddenly. Massive iron structures set into stone walls that looked more medieval than modern. Thomas pressed a button on his visor and they swung open silently. The drive beyond wound through manicured grounds that gave way to wilder forest. And then, around a final curve, the house appeared. Jane had expected something ostentatious, a modern glass and steel monstrosity designed to show off wealth. Instead, the estate was all stone and timber, looking like it had grown naturally from the forest floor. 3 stories of rough-cut stone and heavy beams, with massive windows that reflected the pre-dawn sky. Elegant without being flashy, powerful without being crude. "It's beautiful," she said without thinking. "Alpha designed it himself. Well, with architects and engineers. But the vision was his. I wanted something that honored what we are, not what we pretend to be in the city." Thomas pulled up to the main entrance. "He's waiting for you in his study. Ms. V will show you the way." A woman in her 30s emerged from the house, dressed in casual elegance that somehow looked both professional and comfortable. Asian features, sharp, intelligent eyes, moving with the same fluid grace Jane was beginning to recognize as shifter. "Ms. Walker, I'm Sarah V., Xavier's assistant." "Welcome to Carr Estate." She offered a hand and Jane shook it, noting the unusual warmth of her palm. "I'll take you to Xavier. He's just finishing a call with the council." The interior of the house matched the exterior's aesthetic. Stone floors covered with thick rugs, exposed beams overhead, furniture that looked handmade and built to last centuries. Art on the walls that leaned toward landscapes and nature scenes rather than abstract corporate pieces. "The pack lives here?" Jane asked as they walked. "Some of us. Xavier, myself, his betas Chen and Dominic, a few others. The pack is about 150 members total, but most maintain their own homes in the city. This is headquarters, sanctuary, and home depending on the need." Sarah led her up a wide staircase. "You'll have a guest suite on the second floor. Private bathroom workspace if you need it. Xavier wants you to be comfortable. Xavier wants me controlled." Sarah smiled. "That too, but comfort and control aren't mutually exclusive." She stopped at a heavy wooden door. "He's in here. Fair warning, council calls tend to make him irritable. Try not to take it personally." She knocked twice and opened the door without waiting for a response. Xavier's study was exactly what Jane would have expected. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive desk that looked carved from a single tree, windows overlooking the forest, and Xavier himself, standing with his back to the door, phone pressed to his ear, radiating tension. "I've handled it, Victoria. The footage is secure. The witness is cooperating." His voice was hard, controlled. "Your services are no longer required." Jane couldn't hear the response, but whatever Victoria Ashford said made Xavier's shoulders tighten. "That's not your decision to make. I'm Alpha here, and I've contained the threat within my territory. The council can accept my solution, or we can have a longer conversation about jurisdiction and authority." A pause. "I'm aware of the protocols. I'm also aware that those protocols were written 300 years ago and perhaps need updating for the modern era." Sarah touched Jane's arm and gestured for her to sit in one of the leather chairs facing the desk. Jane sank into it, still clutching her duffel bag, feeling like she'd walked into a confrontation she barely understood. The dormant gene changes the equation, and you know it. Xavier turned slightly, and Jane saw his profile, the hard set of his jaw. "She's a potential pack, not just a human witness. That puts her under my jurisdiction, not yours. I don't care what the precedent says. I'm setting a new precedent." "Yes, I'm aware of the political implications." He ended the call and stood for a moment, breathing carefully, visibly reining in his temper. When he turned to face Jane, his expression was controlled, but those amber eyes still held a dangerous light. "Ms. Walker, you made it. Your driver was very professional. No one murdered me even once." A flicker of amusement crossed his face. "The night is young." He moved to the desk, pulling out a thick document. "Your contract as promised. Reviewed and approved by 3 lawyers, one of whom is human and has no connection to my pack. Every clause is clear. Every protection explicit." Jane took the document, scanning the first page. The language was dense, legal, but certain phrases jumped out. "Shall not cause harm, direct or indirect, to Jane Elizabeth Walker or any member of her immediate family. Protection from all members of Carr Pack, with enforcement authority resting solely with Xavier Carr as Alpha. Investigation into the death of David Walker. All findings to be shared with Jane Walker within 6 months." "This is 47 pages long," she said. "You wanted legal protection. Legal protection requires specificity. Take your time reading it. You're not giving me the footage passwords until you're satisfied." Jane looked up at him. "The council call didn't go well. The council is concerned that I'm setting a precedent they don't like. Allowing a human witness to live, bringing her into my territory, promising investigation into what might be council-sanctioned killing. They're old, Jane. They think in terms of absolutes." Humans discover us. Humans die. Simple, clean, traditional. And you don't? I think the world has changed in the 300 years since those rules were written. I think unnecessary killing draws more attention than clever management. And I think a journalist with dormant shifter genes is more valuable to my pack as an ally than as a body in the woods. He sat on the edge of his desk, studying her. The council has given me 1 week to prove you're not a threat. If I can't, Victoria comes back to finish the job. Jane's blood ran cold. 1 week to prove I won't expose your entire species? Essentially. Which means for the next 7 days, you're my guest here. You'll stay on the estate. You'll meet the pack. You'll learn what we are beyond the monsters you saw last night. And hopefully, by the end of it, you'll understand why our secrecy is necessary. Or I'll be dead. I won't let that happen. The certainty in his voice was absolute. You have my word, Jane. You came here in good faith. You're negotiating rather than running or publishing. That earns my protection, regardless of what the council wants. Fatso, Jane set the contract aside. Why risk conflict with this council for a journalist who was trying to destroy your reputation a week ago? Xavier was quiet for a long moment, and something flickered across his face too complex to name. Because you remind me that not everything is packed with politics and ancient laws. Because you had the courage to knock on a door you should have run from. And because... He stopped, seeming to reconsider his words. Because you might be the daughter of a shifter who made a choice I respected, even if I didn't understand it. You knew my father? No, but I knew of him, a shifter who left pack life, who chose love over tradition, who tried to build something human. That took strength. The fact that you exist, that you're standing here demanding answers and negotiating with an alpha, suggests you inherited that strength. Jane felt tears prick her eyes and blinked them back furiously. She wouldn't cry in front of Xavier Carr, wouldn't show that kind of weakness. Read the contract, Xavier said gently. Take your time. Sarah will show you to your suite when you're ready. We'll talk more once you've had time to process everything. I've processed plenty already. I watched you turn into a wolf. I drove here with a werewolf chauffeur. I'm apparently part werewolf myself. My processing capacity is maxed out. Then rest. Eat something. The estate has full security, and I've given orders that you're not to be disturbed unless you choose to be. He moved toward the door, then paused. Jane, welcome to the world behind the world. Try not to let it eat you alive. He left before she could respond. Sarah appeared moments later with a tray of coffee and pastries that looked professionally made. Thought you might be hungry. It's been a long night. Jane stared at the food, at the contract, at the expensive study in the mansion in the forest owned by werewolves. This is insane. Most days, Sarah agreed cheerfully, but you get used to it. Come on, let me show you your room. You can read the contract there. Maybe get some actual sleep. Jane let herself be led through hallways and up another flight of stairs to a suite that was larger than her entire apartment. King bed with a thick duvet, sitting area with a fireplace, bathroom with a soaking tub and a shower that looked like something from a spa. There are clothes in the closet, probably not your style, but they'll fit. Xavier had them brought in this morning. Sarah set the tray on the coffee table. Lock is electronic, keyed to your thumbprint. No one can get in without your permission, not even Xavier. How did he get my thumbprint? Property records when you signed your apartment lease. Xavier is thorough. Sarah moved to the door. Get some rest, Jane. Tomorrow starts your week of learning what we really are. You'll want to be sharp for it. She left, and Jane finally let herself collapse onto the bed. contract clutched in her hands, pastries forgotten. Somewhere in the house, werewolves were going about their morning. Outside, the sun was rising over forests that belonged to creatures who shouldn't exist. And Jane Walker, journalist, skeptic, woman who believed in facts and evidence, had just agreed to spend a week learning about magic. She pulled out her phone and stared at Xavier's number. Then she looked at the contract's final page, at the signature line waiting for her. 7 days, she thought. 7 days to decide if I trust a monster or run from an entire hidden world. The problem was, she was starting to suspect Xavier Carr might be the least monstrous creature in this new reality, and that realization was somehow more terrifying than anything else. Chapter 6. The pack. Jane woke to afternoon sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows in a moment of complete disorientation. Cream-colored walls instead of her apartment's beige, the scent of pine, and something wilder instead of city exhaust. Silence instead of the constant hum of traffic. Then memory slammed back. Werewolves. Xavier. The contract. She sat up, finding the 47-page document on the nightstand where she'd left it after reading until her eyes crossed. Everything was there, every protection she'd demanded, written in legal language that left no loopholes. Xavier's signature already graced the final page, bold and somehow aggressive. Her phone showed 2:37 p.m. and 17 missed calls. 3 from her mother, the rest from numbers she didn't recognize. She'd deal with those later. A knock on the door made her tense. "Ms. Walker, it's Sarah, just checking if you're awake." Jane pulled on the robe she'd found in the bathroom, noting that it fit perfectly. Of course it did. Xavier was thorough. "Come in." Sarah entered with another tray, this one laden with lunch that looked better than anything Jane typically made for herself. "You slept through breakfast, figured you might be hungry." "What time does Xavier want to see me?" 5 p.m. Gives you time to eat, shower, prepare questions. Sarah set the tray down and pulled out a tablet. "I'm supposed to brief you on basic pack structure and etiquette before you meet everyone." "Everyone?" "Xavier's having dinner with the core pack tonight. 23 people who live on the estate or close enough to matter. Think of it as introduction and assessment combined. They want to meet the human who's got the council twisted up." Jane's stomach nodded. "I'm not really in the mood to be stared at by a room full of werewolves." "Yeah, well, they're not really in the mood to have their existence threatened by a journalist with evidence. So everyone's uncomfortable. That's pack life." Sarah sat in the chair across from Jane, all business now. First rule. Xavier is alpha. That means his word is law within pack boundaries. You don't challenge him publicly, you don't question his decisions in front of others, and you definitely don't threaten him. I've already done all 3 of those things. In private negotiation, which is different. Tonight, there will be pack members who are already resentful that Xavier brought you here instead of letting Victoria handle you. Give them ammunition by disrespecting him in front of them, and you'll have problems beyond council threats. Jane absorbed that, reaching for coffee that was perfectly prepared. Cream, no sugar. "How did you know how I take my coffee?" "Xavier told me. He's observant about details." Sarah scrolled on her tablet. Second rule. Pack hierarchy is real and it matters. Xavier's betas are Chen and Dominic. You met them the night you witnessed the transformation. They're second and third in command. Below them are ranked wolves based on strength, age, and Xavier's favor. At the bottom are the Omegas who aren't weak, just less dominant. Everyone has a place. And where do I fit? Nowhere yet. You're not Pac. You're not officially under Xavier's protection beyond the contract. You're basically in limbo. Sarah looked up. Which is dangerous, Jane. Limbo means vulnerable. Some wolves will see you as a threat to eliminate if they get the chance. Others will see you as a test of Xavier's authority. How he handles you, how the pack accepts or rejects you, that matters politically. I didn't sign up for werewolf politics. You signed up the moment you pointed a camera at Xavier's window. Sarah's voice wasn't unkind, just blunt. Third rule, don't stare directly at the more dominant wolves. It's challenging behavior. Fourth rule, keep your emotional responses controlled. We can smell fear, arousal, anger, all of it. You broadcast everything through scent, and predators respond to prey emotions. Fifth rule, if someone challenges you, don't back down completely, but don't escalate. Find the middle ground. Jane laughed, the sound slightly hysterical. This is insane. I'm getting etiquette lessons for dinner with werewolves. Would you prefer to go in blind and accidentally start a fight? Sarah stood. Look, I know this is overwhelming, but Xavier took a huge risk bringing you here. The least you can do is not get yourself killed at your first pack dinner. Eat, shower, read the information I'm leaving you. And Jane, try to remember that we're not actually monsters. We're just people who happen to turn into wolves. People who kill humans, who discover their secret. People who've been hunted, burned, tortured, and nearly driven to extinction because humans discovered our secret. Sarah's eyes flashed gold for just a moment. The protocols exist for a reason. They're harsh, but they've kept us alive for thousands of years. Try to understand that before you judge. She left the tablet on the table and departed. Jane spent the next 2 hours reading everything Sarah had left. Pack structure, history, basic facts about shifter physiology. The information was clinical, academic, reading like an anthropology text about a hidden culture. Shifters weren't made through bites like the movies suggested. They were born, genetics passed from parent to child, dormant genes sometimes skipping generations. The transformation required significant energy, burned through calories, left them ravenous. They aged slower than humans once they hit their prime, explaining why Xavier looked mid-30s but was apparently much older. They were stronger, faster, harder to kill than humans. Silver didn't hurt them, that was myth. But fire, decapitation, or enough trauma to prevent healing, that could kill them. And they had mates, a biological imperative, a recognition of compatible genetics and compatible souls. When two shifters found their true mate, the bond was permanent, unbreakable, driving them toward each other with instinctive certainty. Jane paused on that section, reading it twice. Something about the clinical description made her uncomfortable, the way it reduced choice and free will to biological imperative. At 4:45 p.m., she dressed in clothes from the closet. Dark jeans that fit perfectly, a forest green sweater that looked casual but expensive, boots that were broken in despite being new. Xavier really was thorough in his preparations. Sarah appeared at 4:55 to escort her downstairs. You clean up nice. Try to remember, most of them are more scared of you than you are of them. I seriously doubt that. You have the power to expose us to the entire world, Jane. That makes you the scariest person in this house. The dining room was massive, dominated by a table that could seat 40. 23 people were already there, conversations dying as Jane entered. 23 pairs of eyes fixed on her with predatory intensity. Xavier stood at the head of the table, and his presence seemed to fill the room. Everyone, this is Jane Walker. She's our guest for the week, under my personal protection. I expect you to treat her with the same respect you'd show any pack member." The silence was thick with tension. Then a woman in her 40s with silver blonde hair spoke. "With respect, Alpha, she's not pack. She's a threat who's blackmailing us into protecting her. She's a journalist who witnessed something unfortunate and chose negotiation over exposure." Xavier's voice carried absolute authority. "That took courage and intelligence, both of which I value. She has footage," a younger man said. "What's to stop her from uploading it the moment she leaves here?" "Me," Xavier replied simply. "My word that she'll honor our agreement, and before anyone questions my judgment, remember that I've led this pack for 50 years without a single exposure. I'm not starting now." Jane forced herself to stay calm, to not show the fear crawling up her spine as 23 predators assessed her. "I'm not here to hurt anyone. I just want answers about what I am, what my father was. Xavier offered me a deal that protects both of us. That's all. And if you decide the deal isn't good enough..." This from Chen, the beta she recognized from that night in the office. "What then?" "Then I guess we both lose. You lose your secrecy, I lose my life. Mutually assured destruction, right?" Jane met his eyes, remembering Sarah's warning about challenging but unable to back down completely. "I don't want that any more than you do." Chen studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Fair enough." Xavier gestured to the empty chair at his right. "Sit, Jane, let's eat." The dinner was surreal. Conversations flowed around her in languages she sometimes recognized and sometimes didn't. Pack members discussed business deals, territory disputes with other packs, mundane details about human jobs that seemed bizarre coming from people who turned into wolves. The woman who'd first challenged her, introduced as Catherine, kept watching Jane with suspicious eyes. "So you're dormant," she said during a lull in conversation. "You've got the genetics but no active abilities." "Apparently, I didn't know until yesterday." "Have you ever felt anything unusual? Heightened senses, unusual strength, unexplained anger?" Jane thought back through her life. "I've always had good night vision, and I've always been able to tell when people are lying. Their scent changes somehow. I thought I was just perceptive." "That's low-level shifter awareness," Catherine said. "Your senses are better than human normal, even though you can't shift. With training, you might be able to activate them more." "Or kill herself trying," the young man who'd questioned her earlier added. "Forced transformations have a shit success rate." "No one's forcing anything," Xavier interjected smoothly. "Jane's genetic status is a separate matter from the footage. We deal with the footage situation first, then she can decide if she wants to explore her abilities." After dinner, as pack members dispersed, Xavier touched Jane's arm. "Walk with me." They went outside into the gardens behind the house. Night was falling, and the temperature had dropped enough that Jane could see her breath. Xavier didn't seem to notice the cold. "You did well in there," he said. "Catherine was testing you, and you didn't break. She hates me. She's protective of the pack and suspicious of outsiders. Give her time." Xavier led her down a gravel path toward the forest edge. "I wanted to show you something." They walked in silence for several minutes, the trees closing in around them. Jane's heart rate increased, very aware that she was alone in the dark with a werewolf who could kill her without effort. Then they emerged into a clearing, and Jane stopped breathing. Wolves. Dozens of them, scattered through the clearing in various states of rest and play. Some were massive like Xavier had been. Others smaller but still far larger than natural wolves. They moved with that same fluid grace, and as she watched, One of them transformed back into a human form she recognized. Sarah. This is what we really are, Xavier said quietly. Not the business meetings and corporate facades. This, pack running under the moon, free to be our true selves. Jane watched a pair of younger wolves playfully wrestling, their joy obvious even in animal form. It's beautiful. It's home. It's family. It's everything humans severed when they chose civilization over instinct. Xavier looked at her. Your father gave this up to be with your mother. He walked away from pack, from the run, from everything we are. That kind of sacrifice, Jane, it's almost unheard of. Do you think he regretted it? I think he loved your mother enough to make a choice that cost him everything. Whether he regretted it, only he could say. Xavier was quiet for a moment. I've started the investigation into his death, calling in favors, looking at old records. If there's truth to find, I'll find it. Thank you. They stood in the clearing, watching the pack, and Jane felt something shift inside her. These weren't monsters. They were people who could become wolves, who lived between two worlds, who protected each other with fierce loyalty. But they were still capable of killing her if Xavier gave the order. The reminder kept her grounded as Xavier eventually led her back to the house, kept her from getting too comfortable in the beauty of what she'd witnessed. She had 7 days to convince the council she wasn't a threat. And the clock was ticking. Chapter 7. Buried Secrets. Over the next 3 days, Jane integrated into pack life while maintaining careful distance. She learned that Chen was a corporate lawyer who handled Xavier's business interests, that Dominic ran security for both the legitimate businesses and the pack itself, that Catherine had been with the pack for 200 years and remembered when Seattle was still a logging town. Xavier kept his promise about answering questions. Late-night conversations in his study became routine, Jane pressing for details about shifter society while Xavier revealed carefully measured information. She learned about the Council, 7 ancient shifters who governed all North American packs from a compound in Montana. About pack bonds that went deeper than human family ties. About the magic that ran through shifter veins, older than civilization, connected to the earth itself. But on the 4th morning, everything changed. Jane woke to urgent voices outside her door. She grabbed the robe and opened it to find Chen and Dominic in a heated discussion with Xavier. Can't be a coincidence, Chen was saying. Not after all these years. What's going on? Jane asked. 3 sets of eyes turned to her. Xavier's expression was carefully controlled, but Jane had learned to read the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw tightened when he was containing anger. We found something, he said, about your father. Jane's heart kicked into overdrive. What? Tell me. Xavier gestured for her to follow him downstairs to his study. Once inside, he pulled up files on his computer, documents that looked old, scanned from physical records. Your father's death wasn't an accident, Xavier said without preamble. It was an execution. Jane gripped the edge of his desk. What? David Walker was a member of the Silverwood Pack in Oregon. High-ranking, well-respected. 28 years ago, he met your mother at a teaching conference in Portland. They fell in love. Xavier scrolled through the documents. That was a problem. Pack law at the time was strict about human relationships. Romance was acceptable, marriage was not. Having children with a human was absolutely forbidden. Why? Because half-human children are unpredictable. Sometimes they're dormant like you. Sometimes they're fully shifted. And sometimes there's something in between, something unstable that can't control the transformation. The council considered them too dangerous to allow. Jane felt sick. So they killed my father for having me. They tried to force him to leave your mother. He refused. He walked away from his pack, took your mother, and disappeared. For 3 years, they lived quietly. No contact with shifter society. Then you were born, and somehow the council found out. How? Chen spoke up. Hospital records. Blood work when you were born showed the genetic markers. A doctor who happened to be a shifter recognized them and reported it to the council. And they sent someone to kill him. Jane's voice was flat. They sent Victoria Ashford. Xavier said quietly. She staged a car accident. It made it look natural. Your father was coming home from work, took a corner too fast on a wet road, went over an embankment. Clean, professional, no evidence of foul play. Except for the witnesses who saw a wolf near the crash site. Except that. Xavier closed the files. Victoria wanted to kill you and your mother too. Complete elimination of the problem. But your father had taken precautions. He'd left documentation of his relationship with your mother, photographs, evidence that he'd been living openly with a human. If anything happened to his family after his death, that documentation would be released to human authorities automatically. Jane's legs gave out. She sank into the nearest chair. He blackmailed them to save us. He protected you the only way he could. The council agreed to leave you and your mother alone as long as you remained dormant, as long as you never learned what you were. Xavier knelt in front of her chair, meeting her eyes. Jane, your father loved you enough to die for you. He made sure you'd have a chance at a human life, free from pack politics and council threats. Tears streamed down Jane's face. And then I went and discovered everything anyway. I fucked up the life he died to give me. You investigated a corrupt businessman. You followed a story. You couldn't have known what you'd find. Xavier's voice was gentle. Your father would be proud, Jane. You're exactly like him. Stubborn, principled, brave enough to face down threats most people would run from. Does the council know about this? About my father's blackmail? They know, and they're very interested in the fact that David Walker's daughter has now witnessed a transformation and has her own evidence to use as leverage. Chen sat on the edge of Xavier's desk. They're wondering if this is genetic, if your father passed on his talent for strategic blackmail along with his shifter genes. Jane looked up at Xavier, seeing the calculation in his eyes. That's why you're really protecting me. Not because of some genetic markers or because you respect my courage, because you're afraid of what I might do with that documentation. That documentation doesn't exist anymore, Xavier said. I found it. The safety deposit box in Portland, the lawyer who held the files, all of it. Your father's blackmail died with him 21 years ago. Then why am I still alive? Xavier stood, moving to the window. Because I made a choice. I could have let Victoria eliminate you that first night. The council would have been satisfied. Your father's protection be damned. But I looked at your investigation of my business dealings, at the way you refused to back down even when it cost you jobs and safety. I saw someone who reminded me of a shifter I'd respected, even though we never met. You knew about my father before I showed up with that camera. I knew of him. His story is whispered about in pack circles. The shifter who loved a human enough to walk away from everything. The one who beat the council at their own game and lived long enough to see his daughter born. Xavier turned back to her. When I realized you were David Walker's daughter, I knew I couldn't just kill you. It would be spitting on everything your father sacrificed for. So I'm alive because of sentiment. You're alive because I believe the Council's protocols are outdated and barbaric. Because I think my father's generation got it wrong when they decided human contact was too dangerous to tolerate. And because... He paused, seeming to wrestle with something. Because my wolf recognized you that first night in my office. Not just as a witness to eliminate, but as something more. Jane stood slowly. What do you mean, something more? The mate bond. Chen said it when Xavier remained silent. Xavier's wolf thinks you're his mate. Jane, that's why he's been so protective, why he took on the Council for you. Instinct is telling him you're meant to be his. Jane laughed, the sound sharp with disbelief. You've got to be kidding me. This is not some paranormal romance novel, Chen. We're talking about real life. This is real life for shifters, Dominic interjected. The mate bond is a biological fact. Genetic compatibility combined with something deeper. When a shifter meets their true mate, they know. The wolf knows. And I'm supposed to just accept that? That I'm destined to be with a man I met 4 days ago? A man who threatened to kill me? You're not destined for anything, Xavier said, his voice tight. The mate bond is instinct, not fate. I can feel the pull, Jane. My wolf wants to claim you, protect you, bind you to the pack. But I'm not an animal. I can control it. What I feel doesn't obligate you to feel anything in return. Jane moved toward the door, needing space. This is too much. My father was murdered by your council. I'm apparently some kind of supernatural blackmail baby. And now you're telling me I'm biologically compatible with a werewolf. I can't. I need air. Jane. Xavier reached for her. Don't. She jerked away. Don't touch me. Don't tell me it's instinct or biology or any other excuse. Just don't. She fled the study, running through the house and out into the gardens. Her chest felt tight, her breathing shallow. Everything she'd learned in the last 4 days was crashing down on her at once. Sarah found her 20 minutes later, sitting on a stone bench near the forest edge. Xavier sent me to check on you. Tell Xavier I'm fine. You're hyperventilating and crying. That's not fine. Sarah sat beside her, not touching, just present. I know it's a lot. A lot. Sarah, my entire life is a lie. My father was murdered. I'm some kind of genetic experiment that shouldn't exist. And the alpha werewolf who's protecting me thinks I'm his soulmate because his wolf says so. Jane laughed bitterly. I came here expecting answers. I got a supernatural soap opera instead. Your father wasn't murdered for being an experiment, Jane. He was killed for loving someone, for choosing happiness over pack law. That's not shameful. That's beautiful. That's tragic. It's both. Sarah was quiet for a moment. I wasn't born into the car pack. I was orphaned when I was 12. Rogue wolves attacked my family, killed my parents. Xavier found me, took me in, gave me a home when I had nothing. He didn't have to. I wasn't his responsibility. But he saw a child who needed protection, and he gave it. Jane looked at her. Why are you telling me this? Because I need you to understand that Xavier isn't the monster you think he is. He's ruthless, yes. He's dangerous. He's killed people who threatened the pack, but he's also saved more lives than you can count. He's built a community where shifters can live safely, where we don't have to hide what we are from each other. Sarah met Jane's eyes. He cares about you, Jane. Mate bond or not, he sees something in you worth protecting. Don't throw that away because you're scared. I'm not scared. I'm overwhelmed. Same thing, different flavor. Sarah stood. Xavier's giving you space. He won't push. but the council calls tomorrow for their final decision. You need to figure out what you want before that call happens. What I want is my normal life back. Too late for that. The moment you witnessed that transformation, normal ended. Now you choose what comes next. Sarah started back toward the house. For what it's worth, I think you should give Xavier a chance. Not because of biology or instinct, but because you two might actually be good for each other. He needs someone who'll challenge him. You need someone who'll protect you. Seems like a fair trade. Jane sat alone for another hour, watching the sun move across the sky. Her phone buzzed repeatedly, messages from her mother asking where she was, saying she was worried. Jane typed out a response saying she was working on a story, would call soon, everything was fine. Everything was not fine. But maybe Sarah was right. Maybe fine was off the table now. Maybe the only choice was forward, into this new reality where monsters were real and her father had been one of them. Where she might be one too. Chapter 8. The Council's Decision. The video conference with the council happened at 10 a.m. the next morning. Jane was allowed to sit in Xavier's study while he took the call, present but not participating. 7 faces appeared on the massive screen. Shifters who looked anywhere from 50 to ancient, eyes that held centuries of experience and ruthless calculation. Victoria Ashford was there too, appearing in a small window to the side. Her expression was cold, clinical. The face of someone who viewed Jane as a problem to be solved rather than a person. Alpha Carr. The speaker was a woman who looked to be in her 70s, silver hair pulled back severely, eyes that glowed amber even through the digital connection. We've reviewed your proposal regarding the Jane Walker situation. The council has reached a decision. Xavier's posture was relaxed, but Jane could sense the tension coiling beneath his controlled exterior. I'm listening, Counselor Ashford. So Victoria was related to someone on the council. That explained her authority. The council recognizes that Ms. Walker's genetic heritage complicates the usual protocols. We also acknowledge that your containment strategy has been effective thus far. The footage remains secure, and the witness has been cooperative. The counselor's gaze shifted to Jane. Ms. Walker, please stand. Jane rose slowly, feeling like she was facing a tribunal. 7 sets of ancient eyes assessed her with predatory intensity. You are the daughter of David Walker, who violated pack law and paid the price. You carried dormant shifter genetics, and you have witnessed transformations that should have resulted in your immediate termination. The counselor's voice was emotionless. Under normal circumstances, you would already be dead. Alpha Carr has argued for an alternative solution. We are prepared to accept that solution with conditions. What conditions? Xavier asked. First, the footage must be destroyed. Not just deleted, but all traces eliminated. We will send our own technical experts to verify. Agreed, Jane said before Xavier could speak. I'll provide all passwords and access. Second, Ms. Walker will submit to genetic testing. We want comprehensive analysis of her dormant shifter genes. The research could prove valuable for understanding genetic inheritance patterns. Jane's jaw tightened. I'm not a lab rat. You are a genetic anomaly who possesses knowledge that threatens every shifter in North America, another council member said, an ancient man with a white beard. You'll accept testing or you'll accept termination. Choose. The testing will be non-invasive, Xavier interjected. Blood work, genetic sequencing, nothing more. I'll oversee the process personally to ensure Ms. Walker's safety and dignity. Fine, Jane said through gritted teeth. Third condition. Counselor Ashford leaned forward. Ms. Walker will be bound to the Carr pack, not as a full member, but under Alpha Carr's direct authority and protection. She will be his responsibility in all things. If she violates pack law, if she exposes our existence, if she becomes a threat in any way, Alpha Carr will be held accountable and punished accordingly. Xavier went very still. You're making her safety contingent on my reputation. We're making her survival contingent on your control of her. If you're so certain she can be trusted, Alpha Carr, then you won't object to tying your fate to hers. It was a trap, Jane realized. Political maneuvering that would either force Xavier to refuse, letting them kill her, or accept and put his own standing at risk. I accept, Xavier said without hesitation. Jane Walker is under my protection and authority as of this moment. Excellent. Then we move to the final condition. Counselor Ashford's smile was cold. Ms. Walker must be turned. She cannot remain dormant while possessing knowledge of our existence. She will be transformed within the next lunar cycle, or the previous conditions become void, and Victoria will complete her original assignment. The room went silent. Jane felt like she'd been punched. You're ordering me to become a werewolf or die? We're offering you the choice your father never gave you. To embrace what you are genetically meant to be, or to end the threat you represent permanently. The counselor's voice was implacable. You have 28 days until the next full moon. Alpha Carr will oversee your transformation. If you survive, you become part of the Carr pack and gain all the protections of pack membership. If you refuse, or if the transformation fails, Victoria handles the situation. This is barbaric, Xavier growled, and Jane heard the wolf in his voice. You're forcing her to risk death or guarantee it. We're following the protocols established for hybrid situations. Ms. Walker is neither fully human nor fully shifter. The transformation will resolve that ambiguity. Counselor Ashford's expression didn't change. Or she can choose a clean death now over the possibility of an agonizing one later. We're not completely without mercy. Jane looked at Xavier, seeing the fury and helplessness in his eyes. He'd fought for her, negotiated, put his own reputation on the line, and the council had outmaneuvered him anyway. I need to talk to Xavier alone, Jane said, before I give my answer. You have 5 minutes. The council screens went dark, leaving only Victoria's window active. I do hope you survive the transformation. Ms. Walker, Victoria said, her tone suggesting she hoped for exactly the opposite. It would be unfortunate to have come this far only to die screaming in Alpha Carr's arms. Her screen went dark too. Xavier stood abruptly, moving to the window, his shoulders rigid with barely controlled rage. I'm sorry. I thought I could protect you from this. I was wrong. They were always going to force this, Jane said quietly. From the moment I took that footage, this was inevitable. Not inevitable. I could refuse. Tell them to go to hell. Take you and run. Get you somewhere they can't find us. And spend the rest of your life as a fugitive from your own kind? Abandon your pack? Jane moved closer to him. That's not a real option, Xavier. You know that. I won't force you to transform. I won't watch you die because of my failure to navigate council politics. He turned to face her, and Jane saw genuine anguish in his eyes. Your father died to give you a human life. I won't be the one who takes that away. My father died to give me a chance at survival. That's what this is. Jane took a deep breath, making a decision that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. I'll do it. I'll take the transformation. Jane, I've spent 4 days learning about shifters, about the pack bonds, the running under the moon, the community. Part of me has been watching all of it and feeling like I'm looking at something I was supposed to have my whole life. She moved closer to him. My father was a shifter. That's in my blood, in my genes. Whether I ever transform or not, maybe it's time to stop running from that. The success rate is only 30%. You could die. It's not a peaceful death, Jane. The body rejecting the transformation is agony, hours of pain before the end comes. Then I guess we'd better make sure I'm in that 30%. Jane tried for a smile, though her hands were shaking. You're Alpha. You've turned people before. What is the difference between success and failure? Xavier was quiet for a long moment. Will. The person being turned has to want it more than they fear it. Has to be willing to let go of their human life completely and embrace what they'll become. Halfway transformations, people who cling to their humanity, they're the ones who fail. So I have to want to be a werewolf. You have to want to survive. The wolf part comes with that. He reached out, touching her face gently. I'll do everything I can to help you through it. Every resource, every bit of knowledge I have. But Jane, I can't guarantee success. No one can. I know. She leaned into his touch despite herself, despite everything. When do we start? Immediately. You have 28 days to prepare physically and mentally. We'll train your body, strengthen your mind, teach you to access the dormant abilities you already have. By the full moon, you'll be as ready as anyone can be. His thumb brushed her cheek. I won't lose you, Jane. I can't. The mate bond? She asked softly. The mate bond. The responsibility I accepted. The fact that you're David Walker's daughter and you deserve better than to die for your father's choices. His eyes searched hers. And maybe because in 4 days, you've become important to me beyond duty or instinct. Before Jane could respond, the screens flickered back to life. 7 council members and Victoria, all watching with expressions ranging from curiosity to cold satisfaction. Your decision, Miss Walker, Counselor Ashford asked. Jane straightened, lifting her chin, channeling every ounce of her father's courage. I accept the transformation. 28 days from now, I'll either be a member of the car pack or I'll be dead. Either way, this threat you're so worried about will be resolved. Bravely spoken. The counselor almost smiled. Alpha Car, the council will send observers in 3 weeks to assess Ms. Walker's progress. Be certain she's ready. She'll be ready, Xavier said, his hand finding Jane's. And council, when Jane survives this and becomes pack, I expect you to remember that she chose this path willingly. She earned her place through courage, not coercion. If she survives, Victoria said coldly, the transformation is in 28 days. I'll be there to witness her success or clean up her failure. Until then, Alpha Car. The screens went dark. Jane and Xavier stood alone in his study, the weight of the council's decisions settling over them like a shroud. 28 days, Jane said, not much time. Enough time. We start today. Xavier pulled her toward the door. First, breakfast with enough protein to feed a small army. Then Chen will work on the genetic testing while Dominic takes you through physical training. After that, I teach you to access your dormant abilities. And tonight? Tonight we run with the pack. Time for you to see what you're choosing to become. They spent the day in brutal preparation. The genetic testing was exactly as invasive as Jane feared, needles and scanners and questions about every aspect of her family history. Chen was clinical but not unkind, explaining each test, why it mattered, what they were looking for. "Your genetic markers are strong," he said, studying results on his computer. "Stronger than we expected for a dormant carrier. That's good news. It means your body already has the framework for transformation. We're not building from scratch, just activating what's dormant." "That makes it more likely to succeed?" Jane asked hopefully. "It makes it slightly less likely to fail." "There's a difference." Chen looked at her seriously. "Jane, I'm going to be honest with you. The next 4 weeks are going to be hell. Physical training that pushes you to your limits. Mental preparation that forces you to confront every fear you have. And at the end, the transformation itself, which is the most painful experience you'll ever endure. Are you sure you want this?" "Does it matter? The alternative is Victoria putting a bullet in my head." "Actually, Victoria prefers knives, more personal." Chen's dry tone made Jane laugh despite herself. "But yes, it matters. You can't go into a transformation ambivalent, Jane. You have to want it. All the genetic markers in the world won't save you if your will fails." "Then I guess I'd better start wanting it." Dominic's training was everything Chen had warned and worse. By the time Jane collapsed on a training mat 4 hours later, her muscles screaming and her lungs burning, she was beginning to question every decision that had led her here. "Again," Dominic ordered. "I can't. I'm done." "You're done when I say you're done. A shifter's body is stronger, faster, more resilient than human. If you're going to survive the transformation, your human body needs to be in peak condition first. That means pushing past your limits every single day until the full moon." He hauled her to her feet. Again. Jane found reserves she didn't know she had. By sunset, she'd run 5 miles, completed strength training that made her arms shake, and sparred with Dominic until she couldn't lift her hands to block anymore. "Not bad," Dominic admitted as she limped toward the house. "You've got endurance. That'll matter when the transformation starts." Dinner was the promised protein feast. Steaks that covered her entire plate, roasted vegetables, rich bone broth that Sarah insisted would help her body prepare for metabolic changes. The pack gathered around her, offering encouragement and stories of their own transformations. "I was born to it," Catherine said. "But I remember my sister's transformation. She was a late bloomer, didn't shift until she was 20. She said it felt like being torn apart and rebuilt at the same time." "That's encouraging," Jane muttered. "She survived. She's been Pack for 180 years now. Pain is temporary. Being Pack is forever." As darkness fell, Xavier found Jane in her room, where she was trying to work, feeling back into her exhausted muscles. "Ready?" he asked. "For what?" "The run. You wanted to see what you're becoming. Tonight you see it from the inside." He led her into the forest seats, where the pack was already gathering. 23 shifters, some in human form, some already transformed into their wolf bodies. The moonlight filtered through the trees, casting everything in silver and shadow. "You can't shift yet," Xavier said, "but you can run with us. Experience what it feels like to be part of the pack in motion. I'll never keep up with you." "You won't have to." He nodded to Sarah and 2 other younger pack members. "They'll match your pace. The rest of us will range around you, protect you, show you what the pack bond feels like." Xavier's transformation was different up close. Jane watched his body shift and change, clothes shredding away as fur rippled across his skin, bones restructuring with audible cracks that made her wince. Within seconds, the massive black wolf stood where the man had been. Amber eyes fixed on her with intelligence and something deeper. The other shifters transformed too, a coordinated change that left Jane surrounded by wolves. Beautiful, terrifying, primal. Xavier's wolf nudged her hand gently, and Jane found herself touching thick black fur, feeling the warmth and power beneath. Then they ran. Jane stumbled at first, her human legs awkward compared to the fluid grace of the wolves around her. But Sarah stayed at her side in wolf form, matching her pace, encouraging her forward. The pack flowed around them like water, weaving between trees, leaping over fallen logs, moving as one organism instead of separate beings. And Jane felt it. The connection, faint but real, thrumming just beneath her consciousness. The sense of belonging, of being part of something larger than herself. Her dormant shifter genetics responding to the pack energy surrounding her. They ran for an hour, Jane's exhaustion forgotten in the exhilaration of the hunt. When they finally stopped in the clearing where Jane had first seen the pack, she collapsed onto the grass, breathless and covered in sweat, but smiling. Xavier transformed back to human form, not seeming to notice his nudity as he knelt beside her. You felt it. I felt something, like an echo of what you all have. That's the pack bond. When you transform, when you become one of us, that echo will become reality. You'll be connected to every member of the pack, bound by ties deeper than blood. He helped her sit up. That's what you're fighting for in 28 days, Jane. Not just survival, but this, family. Jane looked around at the pack. At wolves who were watching her with acceptance rather than suspicion now. She'd run with them, matched their pace as much as her human body could manage, and they'd protected her during the run without hesitation. I want this, she said, surprising herself with how true it was. Not because the council's forcing me, not because it's better than dying, I actually want to be packed. Xavier smiled, genuine warmth in his expression. Good, because you're going to need that want in the days ahead. He was right. The next 3 weeks were the most brutal of Jane's life. She woke before dawn for training with Dominic, pushed her body until it screamed for mercy. Spent afternoons learning to access her dormant abilities with Xavier, focusing on sharpening her senses, letting her partial shifter nature emerge in controlled ways. Evenings were spent with pack members, learning history and law, understanding the complex web of relationships and hierarchies that govern shifter society. And every night, she ran with the pack, feeling that connection grow stronger, feeling her human life slip away piece by piece. Her mother called repeatedly. Jane finally answered on day 12, feeding her a story about being embedded with a research team in the mountains, no cell service. Everything was fine. The lies tasted bitter, but the truth was impossible. On day 18, Xavier began teaching her about the transformation itself. It starts with pain, he said matter-of-factly, sitting across from her in his study. Your entire skeletal structure breaks and reforms. Your organs shift. Your nervous system rewires. For humans undergoing the first transformation, it can take anywhere from 4 to 8 hours. 8 hours of agony. Great. I'll be with you the entire time. The Alpha Bite initiates the transformation and introduces my genetic material into your system. After that, it's up to your body and your will to complete the change. And if my body rejects it, then I hold you while you die and hate myself for failing you. Xavier's voice was raw. But that's not going to happen, Jane. I won't let it. You can't control biology. No, but I can control how prepared you are, and you're more ready than any potential shifter I've ever trained. He reached across the desk, taking her hand. I believe you'll survive this. You have to believe it too. On day 23, the council observers arrived. 3 ancient shifters who watched Jane train with calculating eyes, who questioned her about her commitment, who tested her physical capabilities and mental resolve. She's strong for a human, one of them admitted to Xavier. But is she strong enough? She's strong enough, Xavier replied with absolute certainty. On day 27, the eve of the full moon, Jane barely slept. Tomorrow night, she would either become a shifter or die trying. The odds were still only 30%. More likely she'd fail than succeed. But she'd spent 27 days preparing, training, building her will and her body into something that could survive the impossible. Xavier found her at dawn, standing in the forest clearing where the transformation would happen. Nervous, he asked. Terrified, she admitted. But ready. Tell me why you're doing this. Not for the council, not because you have to. Why do you want this, Jane? She turned to face him, this alpha who'd protected her, trained her, bound his fate to hers. Because I spent my whole life feeling like something was missing. Like I was only half of what I was supposed to be. And for the first time, running with the pack, learning what I am, I feel whole. I want this because it's who I'm meant to be. Xavier pulled her close, and Jane let herself lean into his strength. Whatever happens tonight, Jane, know that you've already proven yourself to me and this pack. You're brave, strong, and worthy. The transformation is just making official what's already true. And if I die, then I'll spend the rest of my very long life regretting that I couldn't save David Walker's daughter the way I should have. He pressed his forehead to hers. But you're not going to die. You're going to survive, and then we're going to figure out what comes next. Together. Jane allowed herself one moment of weakness, of fear and uncertainty. Then she straightened, channeling every ounce of courage her father had possessed. Let's do this. The full moon rose at 8:47 p.m. The pack gathered in the clearing, witnesses to what would either be Jane's rebirth or her death. Xavier stood at the center in human form, waiting. Jane approached him, wearing simple clothes that would be destroyed in the transformation. Her heart pounding, but her resolve steady. Last chance, Xavier said quietly. You can still walk away. I'll face the council's wrath, but you'll live. No, I'm done running from what I am. Jane met his amber eyes. Turn me, Xavier. Make me pack. Xavier's hands cupped her face gently. This is going to hurt more than anything you've ever experienced. When it starts, remember your training. Remember what you're fighting for. And Jane, remember that I'll be right here. He leaned down, and Jane felt his teeth graze her throat. Not a bite yet, just a promise of what was to come. I'm ready, she whispered. Xavier's teeth sank into her throat, breaking skin, introducing his venom into her bloodstream. The pain was immediate and devastating. Jane screamed, her body convulsing as Xavier's genetic material began rewriting her DNA at the cellular level. Fire burned through her veins. Her bones began to crack and reshape. Her senses exploded with overwhelming input. Xavier caught her as she fell, cradling her against his chest as the transformation took hold. I've got you, he murmured. I've got you. Stay with me, Jane. Stay focused. The pain intensified, waves of agony that made her want to beg for death. But through it all, Jane held on to one thought. I am David Walker's daughter. I am packed. I am meant for this. The transformation consumed her, breaking her down to nothing, preparing to rebuild her as something new. And in Xavier's arms, surrounded by a pack, Jane Walker began to die so that something stronger could be born. End of part 1. The transformation has begun. Will Jane survive to become the shifter she's meant to be? Or will the council's forced turning claim another victim? Find out in part 2, The Alpha's Secret. Subscribe to my channel and comment where you are watching from. Thank you for watching.